In the autumn of 1957, the Soviet Union was a nation obsessed with secrecy. The Cold War was at its height, and every achievement, every failure, was measured against the looming shadow of the United States. Deep in the Ural Mountains, far from the eyes of the world, stood a sprawling industrial complex known as Mayak. Officially, it didn't exist. Maps erased it. Locals whispered about it. Soldiers guarded it. And inside, scientists worked day and night to produce plutonium for the Soviet nuclear arsenal. It was here, in this hidden city, that one of the worst nuclear disasters in history unfolded. An event so devastating it poisoned hundreds of thousands of lives, yet remained buried in silence for decades. The disaster began not with a dramatic explosion, but with something far more mundane, a cooling system. Beneath the facility, massive steel tanks stored radioactive waste. They were supposed to be kept cool, constantly monitored, their temperatures regulated to prevent instability. But one tank's cooling system failed. For months, unnoticed, heat built up inside. Pressure rose. The waste inside began to boil, chemical reactions spiraling out of control. Workers went about their routines, unaware that beneath their feet a catastrophe was brewing. Then, at 4:20 p.m. on September 29, 1957, the silence shattered. A massive explosion ripped through the facility. The blast was so powerful, it hurled a concrete lid weighing hundreds of tons into the air. A column of radioactive dust and debris shot skyward, glowing faintly as it drifted eastward. The shockwave shattered windows miles away. The ground trembled. And in that instant, thousands of square kilometers were poisoned. But the Soviet Union did not admit disaster. No sirens, no warnings, no evacuation orders. Villagers nearby saw a strange glowing cloud drifting across the horizon, unaware it carried death. Children chased it, laughing, as if it were a magical mist. Farmers harvested crops dusted with radioactive fallout. Families drank water from rivers already contaminated. Invisible particles entered lungs, bloodstreams, and bones. The government's response was silence. To acknowledge the accident was to admit weakness, and weakness was forbidden. So the truth was buried, and the people were left to suffer. Days passed. Livestock collapsed in fields. Skin burned without fire. Strange illnesses spread through villages. Doctors whispered of radiation sickness, but were forbidden to write it down. Soldiers arrived, not to rescue, but to erase. They bulldozed homes, slaughtered animals, and forced families to leave without explanation. Villages vanished from maps. Survivors were told nothing. They were relocated, stripped of their past, and sworn to secrecy. The zone became known as the East Ural Radioactive Trace, but unlike Chernobyl, it was hidden from the world. The scale of contamination was staggering. The radioactive cloud stretched nearly 300 kilometers, affecting hundreds of thousands of people. Rivers carried poison downstream, contaminating water supplies. Forests became silent, wildlife gone. Yet the Soviet Union pressed forward, continuing nuclear production as if nothing had happened. Workers were ordered back into the facility, their bodies absorbing doses of radiation that would later kill them. The disaster was not just an accident, it was a cover-up, a deliberate erasure of history. For decades, the world knew nothing. Western intelligence suspected something had happened, but the Iron Curtain kept the truth locked away. It wasn't until the 1970s, when a Soviet scientist named Boris Medvedev defected, that whispers of the Kyshtym disaster began to surface. He revealed that an explosion had poisoned an entire region, that thousands had died, and that the Soviet Union had buried the evidence. His claims were met with skepticism, dismissed as Cold War propaganda. But slowly, fragments of truth emerged. Survivors told their stories in hushed tones. Declassified documents revealed the scale of contamination, and the world realized that before Chernobyl, there had already been a nuclear nightmare. Imagine the scene: a mother in a small village watching her children play in fields dusted with fallout. Days later, they fall ill, their skin blistering, their hair falling out. She takes them to a doctor who knows the symptoms but cannot speak the word radiation. Soldiers arrive, ordering her to leave, burning her home, killing her animals. She is relocated to a new settlement, told to forget the past. Her village is erased, her memories forbidden. Multiply her story by thousands, and you begin to grasp the human cost of silence. The tragedy of Kyshtym is not just the explosion itself, but the silence that followed. Families torn apart, villages erased, lives shortened, all hidden behind the walls of secrecy. Even today, the region bears scars. The East Ural radioactive trace, a swath of land poisoned beyond repair, remains one of the most contaminated places on Earth. Few dare to enter. Those who lived through it carry memories of glowing clouds, sudden sickness, and the quiet disappearance of entire communities. Their voices, suppressed for decades, now echo as warnings of what happens when power and secrecy collide. The forgotten disaster before Chernobyl is a story of denial, of human suffering concealed by political ambition. It is a reminder that history is not always what is written, but what is hidden. And in the shadows of the Cold War, one explosion changed lives forever, even if the world was never meant to know.